What's up, everyone, and happy Thursday. Welcome to our webinar. Today is a unique webinar because we have a blend of long-time Saros power users and community members, along with a few new people on the Saros team and quite a few people who aren't yet Saros customers but are interested in it. So today's webinar is going to kind of be this all-encompassing big thing for all of you. But as I said, we have some people who are interested in Saros, don't necessarily use it quite yet. So those of you who are power users, I would love your help in certain areas of this webinar. Number one being, towards the end, as always, we're going to look at some really cool examples of some experiences created in Saros. So if you or someone on your team or someone that you know has a really cool experience, please send it in the chat and I will open it towards the end of the webinar. You've got all webinar to go searching for one. So if you can find one, if you think of one, go for it. Send it on over and we'll use it as a part of the webinar. So I'm looking at everyone's dinner last night. It looks pizza bagels and a PB&J and apples. The Saros Educate team just repping that elementary school dinner. It's incredible. Keely had KFC. I haven't had KFC in years, but honestly, hey, I think it's pretty good, right? I feel like it was pretty good. Elementary Domino's. Yum. Oh, they have new mac and cheese at Domino's, Sam? Wow. Kaylee said it's all right. I didn't know Domino's had mac and cheese either. I feel like Domino's is actually pretty good for like chain pizza, right? I feel like it's got to be better than like Pizza Hut. Anyway, I hope you have had a wonderful week so far. I'm really excited to get into this. For those of you who do not know who I am, my name is Dallin. I am the Director of Education here at Saros. I did my schooling in instructional technology and learning science. I have 11 years of design experience. I've worked with a lot of really cool companies and some fun teams throughout my career, but most importantly, I have 2.5 naked cats. Fun fact, when I bought the house that I live in, I didn't know that I was also buying a colony of stray cats that live in the backyard. So I've become the adoptive father of a colony of stray cats. And yesterday was a milestone. It is the first day in the 2.5 years that I've lived here that I was able to pet one of the stray cats. So pretty good. Anyway, that's me, but enough about me. Let's talk about what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about what Saros even is for those of you who are new. We're going to talk about sort of just the digital landscape and where Saros fits into that. And then we're going to talk about creating really cool premium content in Saros that's going to help you reach your users, whoever they might be. All right, so we'll start with what is Saros and why does it matter? So those of you who are longtime community members, I would love your help with this. How would you define what Saros is and why it matters? I'll give you a few seconds to actually think about that before we start spouting some stuff off. What is Saros and why does it matter? Feel free to add it to the chat once you come up with something good. It doesn't need to be perfect. I just want your thoughts on what Saros is and why it matters in your jobs, in your industry, in your day-to-day life. So take some time, think about that, and let's hear it. Saros is an interactive presentation platform that takes every subject matter and turns it up a notch, says Gene, who creates some incredible stuff. Haley says making campaigns stand out from the crowd. Kudo points to Kaylee because that's kind of what we're talking about today. Ooh, we got Sam that says a combo of Figma, Photoshop, CMS that is accessible to all content creations. Love it. It's our main tool for digital material, says Evelyn. Evelyn, I love to hear that. Yeah, those are fantastic. Design tool because good design matters. I 100% agree with that. Yeah. Soros allows me to work around my very pricey and slow CMS. Warren, I don't think you understand how often we hear that just from users that we talk to from day to day when we go to events or conferences or something like that. That's like the big thing, right? It kind of bridges this gap from people who want to make cool stuff and their technical brick walls that they have to somehow get around. So I love that you pointed that out. Those are all fantastic definitions of what Saros is. I couldn't have said it better myself. But if you think about it, from you trying to reach your audience, whatever it is, and these all fall in line with exactly what I'm going to say. When you're trying to reach your audience, you are essentially in a sea of other people trying to reach your audience. It doesn't matter if your audience is internal folks or buyers or customers or users or whatever it might be. You are one of many people trying to reach them. And there's so many things and so much noise around your user. This says buyer, but you can kind of think of it as whatever your user might be. Again, a lot of people use Saros internally for internal enablement, promotions, promotional content, that kind of stuff. But there's so much stuff going on around the individual user that you are trying to reach. There's a lot of, as it says here, noise, both from other vendors, other teams, outside of work, just life in general. There's so much going on that it's incredibly easy to just get lost in the noise. So here's a few stats that kind of go along with what I'm saying. The average length of time web users take to form an opinion on your content. So think about this, right? There's a lot of noise. You're trying to compete with everyone else, competing for attention with your users. Within 50 milliseconds, your user will have formulated an opinion and have decided the worth or the value of what it is that you are showing them. That's a tiny window. So you don't have a whole lot of time to make the right impression. You need to make just an absolute, it's like a meteor of visual impact that needs to just hit home with your users. And you need to be able to efficiently use that time and make sure you're using that to reach the right people, right? So we got this crazy sea of noise that you're trying to stand out in, and you have a very small amount of time to do it. So a study by Microsoft concluded that human attention spans have dropped 8 seconds, shrinking nearly 25% in just a few years. We have the shortest attention spans ever. I'm going to blame TikTok. Another study says that the average daily time spent with digital media in the United States, Kaylee, you might be a little bit different over there, is expected to increase from 7 hours and 19 minutes from 2022 to close to 8 hours in 2025. So digital consumption in 2011 was around 3.5 hours. So we have gone from 3.5 hours to being projected at 8 hours of screen time in a single day. That is crazy, right? So if you think about the human brain and how we like to process that information, so we love digital content clearly because we're consuming it nonstop. But if you look at the brain, the main thing is 16% of users read web content word from word. 16% will read all of your content. 79% is going to scan your content. That's the big one that I wanted to point out. But I'll also point out this. 94% of content with visuals get 94% more views. How crazy is that, right? That's from Forbes. And then the last one I want to point out here is 79% of users agree interactive content helps them retain information better. I think you know where I'm headed with this. But to drive it home, customers don't read, they scan. As I said before, 79% of online users scan the page instead of reading it word for word, focusing on headlines, summaries, captions, and I'll also add visuals. So here is a heat map of a pretty average looking online news site and where the eye tracking went, right? You can see we are red hot here, and then it just kind of dissipates and it just goes away, right? That's insane. So all of that to say that the need for digital interactive content is huge in how people consume interactive or digital content in 2024, soon to be 2025. So that is a massive thing. If you're only focused on the words that you're including in there, just jam packing any sort of novel of words in a case study, in a report, in an RP, whatever it might be, you're not going to really captivate your audience considering how much they don't want to read all of those words. So it's this kind of interesting thing where people consider digital content anything that is digitized, anything that was added like to a screen. But just taking a standard PDF or a document that could have been printed and sent as a report and just digitizing it by putting it on a phone isn't cutting it. All of the sets that we looked at, everything that we've built up to this point says that it needs to be a premium experience to have that lasting visual impact like I was talking about before. So that's essentially where Seros comes in. And a lot of people think about solutions like Seros as something to really bolster up your website, and that's about it, right? So a lot of people put a lot of time, a lot of effort into the website, into attracting people to buy your service, subscribe to your product, whatever it might be. But then what happens after that? We see a huge drop off of all of the post website experiences that your users have with you and your team and your company that just kind of get dropped because so much attention gets put on your website. And like Lauren pointed out, that's because the CMS is a big part of this, and getting content on the CMS or through the CMS to all of these other things like solution marketing, campaigns, sales content, post-sales content, right? Is really hard to get on the CMS when a lot of its attention is being posted or focused, on the website itself. So that's when Seros comes in and can help bolster up all of these post-website solutions to create these really good experiences for your users, no matter where they're at on their journey with you, your team, your company. So that kind of sets the landscape of the need for Seros and the need for creating really premium content that has a lasting, meteoric visual impact on your users. A little bit morbid, but imagine that your users are dinosaurs and your content is a giant meteor that's coming to say hello to them. That's the kind of impact you need to have with all of your content. Terrible. Minus 4,000 analogy points for me. Let me get caught up real quick on the chat to make sure I'm not missing any questions as we go. Again, feel free to add any links to experiences that you feel like are really good that you want to show off or call out towards the end of this webinar. Okay, it looks like we're pretty good. Can we take a look at this presentation? Certainly. All right, so part 2, let's get into how to create premium content. So if you are a longtime Seros Educate community member, a lot of this information is not new because I've distilled it from many of the guided design courses that we put on, but it'll be a very good refresh and a repackage for you. If you are new, buckle up. But before we get into that, let's talk about what premium content is not. Think of the deliverables that you use from a day-to-day, whether it's from team to team within your company or to your users externally, your customers, whatever. Think of the content you're like, man, this kind of sucks, but it's all that we've got. Things that are generic, that are bloated, they're boring, they're confusing, they're ordinary, they're all the same. Not so premium content doesn't leave a lasting impression on your users. It's a slide deck that they consume and then they forget about going forward. And it doesn't necessarily represent you or your brand very well, right? That is not premium content. So we want to create things that aren't that. So again, think of those slide decks, those really wordy documents, the reports, the case studies that aren't really telling a story, and think of how you could take that ordinary content and create something that has a much larger visual impact on your target audience. So let's get into it. But before we do, I want to show off one of my favorite designs that I've seen in the last little while. And if you're in our current Creating Your Design Process course, you have seen this design before because I'm obsessed with it. It was created by the Seros marketing team, and I think it is a prime example of what I'm trying to describe, something that has a visual impact on your users. This is a marketing piece for prospective customers of Seros. And the whole point of it is to get them excited, to get them informed, and corral them towards signing up for a demo so we can get them in the door. So as I look at this design, feel free to point out what you like about it and how it's leaving a visual impact as opposed to pretty standard content that you see created elsewhere. So I'm going to open it up here and I'll let it speak for itself. So right away, you got this really good header section, a lot of movement, a lot of color, a lot of vibrancy, right? A lot of motion to it. You scroll down here, you've got the main value prop of Saros, some really good stats, some that we even covered ourselves. Another really good section. Look how well this is designed, right? Subtle animations, makes it a little playful, keeps our attention, but it's very well organized, it's not overloaded, and it's representing our brand incredibly well. And then we got some examples here that we could open up, but for the sake of time, we'll keep going. Got this awesome rotating banner, right? Which leads us right to the main course, which is to drive people to our CTA, which is to request a demo. Gene says, I like that the text isn't overwhelming and it's easy to read. So yeah, compare that to a lot of other marketing collateral that you see gets sent out. That's just lots of words, or it's visual, but it's very static, right? It doesn't have a lot of motion. It doesn't have a lot of like energy to it. And it doesn't really create that visual impact. There are really good examples of static content out there. But what's the lasting impact that they have, right? And how does that static content drive users to perform whatever the action might be? So I love that piece. So with that piece in mind, and with some of the things that I pointed out and the things that Gene pointed out, the main takeaway of creating premium content is that every touch point with your customer or user is a vital step on their journey with you. Don't just give them a document. Instead, give them an experience, something that they can experience and leaves a lasting impact on them. So now let's go over 5 easy tips for creating premium content within Saros. All right. Again, I have distilled all of these from the various courses that the Saros Educate team teaches. And so this might be a refresh for you. This might be something new for you. But tip 1, pulled from our course, Interactive Content Creation, is identify your target audience. So understanding who you are serving is really going to drive the content you create and how it ends up being created, right? Unless you are laser focused on who is going to consume the certain project that you're working on, it's going to probably too general and too broad to really reach them. We talked at the beginning of the webinar about all of the noise that is going on around your user, and you have to break through that noise, and you have a very small moment in time in order to capture them and keep them on your page. So understanding who your target audience is going to help you do that tenfold. And some tips on doing that is to chat with points of contact or point of contacts. Is it points of contact or point of contacts? What's the plural version of point of contact? Point of contact. Is it point of contact? What if there's multiple points of contact? Oh, okay. Well, I don't know. Either way, talk to those points of contact. All right. I'm going with Gene. I'm not going with my slide. Points. Oh, man. Anna says it's points. All right. I did it wrong. Apologies. Either way, chat with your points of contact, the decision makers who are involved with your target audience, and subject matter experts to get a better understanding of who that audience is. You can also do things like conduct audience interviews. You can send out surveys or join communities. If you are part of the Educate community, we have sent out multiple surveys and multiple polls to kind of get a feel for what you're hungry for and what you need from Saros. And that dictates a lot of the decisions we make internally at Saros. So understanding your target audience and being able to identify them will really guide the content that you're going to create. Which leads us to step 2, pulled from our guide design course, creating your design process. We're currently putting this course on for a few of you. So you have just talked about this, but getting content inspired. which means to look at examples of similar content and look at examples of not so similar content to get very specific inspiration of how you want to lay your design out. Pinpoint exactly what caught your eye with that example, really internalize, I like this tab menu because why, right? And then think about how you can then use that to elevate the design you're creating in Saros. Along with that is to being able to identify how those inspiring bits apply to your audience. You might find something that's really, really cool, but if it's not really going to work for your target audience, you might just want to put it in the back pocket and save it for later. But again, the main thing is to really get inspired by looking at other content created either in Saros or just digital content out there that you see every day of your life, and being able to really internalize what you liked about it and apply it, translate it to the content that you're creating within Saros. Which takes us to tip 3, incorporate contrast from intro to design. Many of you have taken this course, but as a refresh or as a first time for those newbies of you, let's go over what contrast is. Using stark opposing visual elements to add emphasis to key aspects of a design or to direct a user's attention. In other words, contrast can establish a visual hierarchy that guides a user's eyes down, across, and around a page. We're going to look at some really good examples of contrast in just a second. But in other words, contrast can draw attention to focal points on the page. In other words, contrast can increase the engagement and captivate that audience in that small window, that time frame that you have in order to do so. So that's what I'm talking about. It's a fundamental but incredibly valuable design principle. It's super easy to apply, but doing so in any degree, in any fashion, will really up-level your design. And like I said, establish that visual hierarchy that makes your content a whole lot easier to consume. Going back to what we talked about at the beginning of the webinar is users scan content, right? They're not going to read every single word. So incorporating contrast helps guide their eyes as they are scanning and will potentially help them to scan longer. If they see very big, bold headers, they'll probably bounce from header to header. They'll bounce from header to image, and you'll be able to kind of guide their eyes down and across the page using contrast. So let's talk about the different types of contrast that you can employ very fundamentally to improve the retention on your page. So first being, as many of you have seen before, color contrast. So think about contrasting light versus dark, monochromatic versus very vibrant, warm versus cool, bright versus calm, gradients versus solid. There's also shape contrast. Think of contrasting large versus small, really thin versus heavy, short versus tall, any sort of size. Did I say shape before? I meant to say size, but I said shape. So size contrast, again, really contributes to establishing that visual hierarchy. The bigger something is, the higher up on the hierarchy, people are going to naturally assume it means. Okay, I did say shape. I meant to say size. Apologies. But speaking of shape contrast, think of not necessarily in terms of just geometric shapes, like I have very simply laid out here, but think of shapes in terms of like soft versus angular, right? Opposing fonts. How do you choose two different styles of fonts that contrast well against each other and create a very visually interesting page? Minimal versus complex. So maybe you have a very plain background, but a very detailed product lift image on top of that. That's a really good use of contrast. Uniform versus chaotic. That kind of falls into alignment, which many of you are very aware of. But breaking the alignment on your page to introduce a level of chaos that increases that visual impact. Remember that marking piece that we just looked at? Those little bubble tags that are kind of spread across the entire page, right? Like that is very chaotic, but it adds a very interesting visual element to the page. And then lastly, negative contrast, or as many of you might know it as white space, positioning, and separation of elements. You don't want to cram everything onto a page. It's okay if you've got open spots on a page. That doesn't mean your page looks incomplete. It's just allowing breathing room on the page so your users feel like they're in control of the page. They're not overwhelmed by the amount of content on there. And like we said, they're going to be able to scan from one area to the other without getting lost, and they'll be more likely to stay on the page. So that is tip 3. And now let's look at a really good example of incorporating contrast. So this is a really good experience created by the team over at Prudential. This is an event follow-up page to keep the event attendees continually engaged with what went on in the event, to keep them learning, to keep them curious, and keep them going. So there's a lot of blue, but look how well the blue contrasts with each other, right? Like when you first look at this, your eyes are probably drawn to one of two places. Either this gigantic white header contrasted well against the blues, or this awesome picture of the lacrosse player for the Rutgers team, right? But also look at the contrast with this grid pattern back here and the circular masking of the image, right? Very uniform, very angular and square. And then you just have this giant circle contrasted over top of it, a small touch that adds a lot of visual elements to the page. As we continue to scroll down, these circular containers here contrast well with the blue background. And this "and" is so small. This is an awesome little touch. The "and" between it is so small that it creates a lot of negative contrast in between here that adds a focal point to the "and." It's really very interesting how they laid that out, but it works really, really well. We keep scrolling. All of a sudden, the next content block changes, and we have this lighter blue, but the white is still contrasted extremely well, following a very similar image pattern. But what I wanted to point out here is note the visual hierarchy that they have established with size contrast, right? The size of the header, your eyes probably went here, and then here, and then here, and then back up to the caption here, or the subtitle here. Very good use of size contrast to create a very organized section of the page, right? I would say, like I said, you probably started with the big header, and after finishing that, you might have read this, but more than likely, you went down to this section here. You might have skipped over the body content altogether and read "Get insights about how budgeting can help put you on the right path." That's very well designed. This is additional information, but you probably jumped over it because of the visual hierarchy established in this content block. Same thing going on here. Like, this is a really good design that's very on brand and represents Prudential extremely well. So shout out to the Prudential team for creating an awesome experience. All right, tip 4, ensure visual clarity. This is pulled from our guide design course, Visuals and Digital Layouts. It's essentially meaning too much content on a page can be overwhelming. We talked about that. But sometimes incorporating that negative contrast or that white space is not enough. More often than not, we are dealing with a lot of content that we need to figure out how to add to the page without being overwhelming. So a really good way to do that is, yes, to incorporate contrast and ensure that you have a very good visual layout. But sometimes there's too much information and your users just scrolling up and down, up and down, up and down. So you can hide or conceal that additional information with interactivity within Saros. So let's look at a really good example of a very action and content dense experience that utilizes everything we've talked about, especially interactions, to conceal the extra information. It is a case study put together by our marketing team of a success story done by the HubSpot team using Saros. So a while ago, we had this really cool fireside webinar where we had Ron from the HubSpot team, and he talked to us about how his team incorporates Saros into the HubSpot for Startups company and how they've used it to captivate audiences and really drive a lot of their metrics. And so we created a case study that explains that whole story. And a lot of times when you think about case studies, you oftentimes think of like 14 to 24 page PDFs with a few charts and graphs here. But this is a really good example of breaking through that noise of case studies and creating something really good. So here's a little intro section of Ron. You see how well this is organized with our contrast, with our alignment, with using these containers, right? This is a very well organized page. And then you scroll down, we have a complete shift in background color to represent we're on to the next section, but we tie them together with this tag here, right? And so this already is a good amount of text, right? So we got our header, which is where you probably started, and then we got a good amount of body text. But there's a whole lot more that the team wanted to add to this page, but they felt like it would just be overwhelming. They added way too much. So they added these interactive flip cards to conceal the other sections of content they wanted to add here with these really good taglines to kind of intro the flip card and then the additional info here. Imagine if all of this information was just spread out across this content block. It would be nothing but words, and it wouldn't be very visually interesting, right? So if I scroll down one more time, where do your eyes automatically go? I'll do it again because I kind of screwed up the scroll. But establishing the visual hierarchy, where do you look first? So now you've met Ron. He's amazing. We love Ron. And we come down to this section. Where did your eyes go? To the tiles on the right, says Gene. Me too, because the visual contrast that we have added here, both in terms of shape, size, and color, creates this very good visual hierarchy where you started here and you probably went here. You might have gone to the section header right here, but you might have gone here second. But you probably went to these geometric shapes, these large white tiles, because we established that visual hierarchy. So if a user is scanning this, this is valuable information that we would like them to read. They might not get to it, but if they do, they're going to get to it after they interact with these tiles first. So we've kind of created these sums of small bits, the takeaways, the main takeaways that we want them to pull from this section and added them here with interactivity. Very clever how that was done. We go back down a little bit. We've actually embedded Ron's experience here. So instead of uploading a bunch of screenshots like you see a lot of times in case studies, our viewers can actually interact with the experience that we are talking about in the case study directly within the design that we put together. A little bit more information, a big bold quote, right? Very well organized and put together. And then some more of this stuff. It's really good. Amazing work. So again, a lot of times you're going to have a whole lot of content that you're going to have to deal with. And if you feel like your page is getting too long, or if you're getting too much content on there, you can always conceal it, tuck it away with interactive bits, pop-ups, hovers, flip cards, right? Anything like that to increase the interactions on your page, like we talked about at the intro of the webinar, and to distill confidence in your users that like, oh, this isn't too much. I can go through all of this. If they were to see that giant sea of text, they would probably bounce pretty quick. All right, so that takes us to tip 5, pulled from interactive content creation, part 2, distribute and share. So we talked about this in interactive content creation part 2, but we also talked about it in our other course, creating your design process. But you need to consider where your customer is going to engage with your content. Things like, is it at work? Is it at home? Is it on the go? Are they going to view it primarily on a desktop computer? Is it going to be on their phone primarily? Or is it at an event or a conference on a giant touch screen? Those things will really dictate the style and the layout of your experience. You don't want to spend a lot of time creating something for desktop if 99% of your viewership is going to happen on a smartphone, and the other way around as well, right? For the Saros Educate team, a lot of our content, according to our analytics, about 96% of the Saros Educate content on our platform is viewed on a computer. So we design primarily for desktop screens first. But that will help create that very good experience that your users will have with your content. You also need to think about how they will access your content. Is it going to be through a link sent in maybe an email or something like that? Is it going to be embedded? Like you can embed Saros experiences. Is that going to be embedded on a different website or your CMS or something like that? The way they interact with it will also dictate how you design it. And then lastly, but also extremely important, is when you're putting this all together, you need to keep in mind how you plan to track the content's success. How do you decide if your content was successful or not? And a lot of that will determine on what you're trying to accomplish, who your audience is, and the type of content you created. Is it just informational content? Is it an infographic that you're kind of spread the information? Probably views would be a very good analytic to track, but also time spent on page. That means they're really consuming a lot of the information on that infograph. Is it marketing content like the one or the landing page that I showed you at the beginning? If so, maybe it's not necessarily time spent on page, but more so the click-through rate, the amount of demos that were scheduled through the fill form that we had at the bottom of that page. So however you're trying to track it, is kind of what you need to consider as you're putting it together, because it's going to be different, and success is going to constitute different things depending on what it is that you're trying to accomplish. So those are our 5 tips. And as a takeaway, premium content will create premium experiences for your customers, for your users, for whoever it might be. You don't want to create that digitized content. You want to create something that's premium, that is interactive, that it's visual, and has that dinosaur level impact that we kind of talked about earlier. So you might be asking yourself, all right, how do I create this said premium content? Well, you guessed it. The entire Saros Educate team is dedicated for just that. We have a help center, video tutorials, one-on-one trainings, webinars, courses, and certifications, community activities, all centered around helping you unlock creativity in whatever fashion it might need. It could be maybe you're stumped on something and you just need some help. We're there for you. You need to brainstorm some ideas. You need to get some feedback or opinions on something, or maybe you just need a creative break from your day-to-day. That's what we're here for. And obviously, it's on educate.saros.com. We have incredible jobs because we get to work with so many awesome community members and Saros users on all of their projects. We just get to be creative all day long, and we absolutely love it. So thank you, everyone who's been a part of this, and thank you, everyone who is active in our community. That is my spiel. Any questions? We give you some time to think about if you have any questions about anything that I had said. Like I said, we've got a mix of audience members today, and we try to create something engaging for everyone so someone can take something away. I'm also going to scan and see if anyone wanted to show off their cool experience. Sam sent a link to a Domino's page. I don't think it was created in Saros, but I want to look at it. Hey, Kaylee's pointing out Anna Karina's really cool. Here, let me open this up. Created by one of our extraordinary community members. All hand drawn, by the way. How cool is this? I don't speak a lick of French, but I love it. So this is a very interactive piece, right? Like, look at this calendar. It's an advent calendar. That's so cool. I've never seen this before. Wow. This is very much a guided experience. I don't even need to understand what any of the words are saying in order for me to be extremely engaged with this. And the music playing, right? Yeah, this is so cool. Thank you for sharing this. This is really cool. Wow. Amazing job, Anna. Thanks, Kaylee, for sharing. All right. So Peter says, here is a fun out-of-the-box experience I was allowed to create. Let's see what you got, Peter. Ooh, for Halloween, you say. Oh. I love it so much. Whoa. Hey, that's pretty sick. Employee recognition for stories. Oh, this also, like, your use of just the scariest fonts is fantastic, Peter. Beware of lurking dangers of poor employee recognition. You can transform your thriving company into a ghost ship adrift in the sea of low morale. Ignoring your employees' hard work doesn't just send shivers down their spines. It can lead to frightening business results. Peter, this is great. Let's get in. Climb through a window and search a room for clues. Follow the ghost of failed recognition through the house and find out what happened to the poor souls that were forgotten. Oh, that's another crazy guided experience, Peter. This is so good. Look at these. Which one should I click on? Left or right? Someone tell me. Left. Gene says right. Sorry, Leona's faster. Oh gosh, there's a ghost. I've been playing the Resident Evil games all through October. I was voted I was voted employee of the month by my coworkers, but since there are 500 ways to spell Katie, management went with the other Katie. No. When everyone spoke up saying they meant me, management just went, it's already done. It's not a big deal. Oh, that sucks. It's giving the old Slenderman game. Yeah, it really is, though. Oh, this is so good. Like I said, I've been playing all the Resident Evils to try to like be scared and feel something again, and this is right up that alley. Oh, wow. For Nurse Appreciation Week, we got a pack of gum. At least when we save lives, we had minty fresh breath. I mean, it's true. It's so funny. Hey, you know what though? This is a lack of employee appreciation. I agree with you, Peter. However, I must say, when I was younger, I played a lot of basketball. I got elbowed in the mouth and split my lip open. And so I obviously had to like go to the hospital and get it all stitched up. Under my mustache, I have this giant scar you'll never see, but it goes across my lip and in the back of my mouth because I just split it wide open. And so I'm getting stitches, and the guy stitching me up had bad breath, and I will never forget that. So, though you're right, that is low appreciation. I once received a thank you card for a free muffin despite being gluten free. No, and could not have the muffin. That's a good one though. Like this is so fun. Oh yeah. And then the ghosts take you on to like you follow the ghost. This is sick. I love this. What should we click on? This? Oh my gosh, this is so good. I placed my order for my 15-year of service award, and the company took the state tax for the items out of my next paycheck. Horror stories. Oh, horror stories. I wasn't able to redeem my 20-year service award because my company hadn't paid their bills to get the vendor, and they were on hold. By the time I could redeem it, I didn't want to anymore. I'm not even going to ask if these are real horror stories or just really good ones you created. Following the ghost. Oh, this is perfect. Oh, that's sick. Our company once asked employees what the company should send to clients for a holiday gift, but they didn't send anything for their employees. Oh, this is so good. All right, that's in the chat. Everyone open that up and take a look. That is so good, Peter. I love this so much. Wow. All right. Whoa. Let's redo this page. That's so good. Wow, this is so sick. This is such a fun experience. And like a really good one to point out because a lot of the things I was saying was very much like customer facing. But as I mentioned a few times, it works internally as well. Like how many times do you get a company-wide email that you may or may not read all of? Or how many times is there a certain video or something they could send out company-wide that you may or may not read? Or one that I am criminally prone to do. How long does it take you to complete a certain compliance training? A lot of that can be bolstered by really cool experiences like what Peter showed off there. That is awesome. Anna and Peter, thank you so much for those. Those are so good. In one of the other rooms, it said my company had a dozen warm cookies delivered to each remote employee's house on Employee Appreciation Day. Nice thought, but I have diabetes. No, those are great. No, that's really, really good, Peter. I love that. I've never seen that experience before, and I think it's so good. Awesome. All right. Any questions for Peter or for me about anything that we've looked at? 1,000,000 design points to Peter from Cass. All right. There you go. Peter, you're at the top of the design leaderboard now. After one fail swoop, right there. 1,000,000 from Cass to you. Cass, how's the trampoline business? I hope it's just booming. I hope it's hopping, pun intended. All right, thank you, everybody. Jumping. Yeah, I hope it's jumping. Thank you. So it's definitely hopping. Incredible. Bouncing. Yes. This has been so fun. Thank you. Those experiences were so sick. Before I let you go, I want to point out, oh my gosh, there I am. I want to point out a couple of things coming up with Saros Educate. Two things I want to point out. One is we've recently started doing Educate open office hours. Mondays at 3 p.m. Eastern. You missed it. Thursdays at 11 a.m. Eastern. This is just completely open, unscripted. Anyone can jump in if you need help with something, if you need feedback, you want to brainstorm, you have any Saros related questions you just need answers to. We'll be online for 1 hour. You can hop in, get your help, hop out, and just go from there. It's something that we just recently started up. So if it's something that you're inclined to do, Liana has sent these page that I am looking at right now, and you can use that as much as you would like. All right, some upcoming events. Next Thursday, 1 week from today, on Halloween, we'll have our third ever Saros Educate community meetup. If you've not been to one of our community meetups before, they're wild. But loosely, this is what we will cover. Product update overviews, just keeping you up to date on all the cool stuff coming out in Saros, all the new features, how to use them, that kind of stuff. We'll talk with you about ideas for courses, for webinars, how we can improve the Educate platform in general. We always like to do a little bit of design talking. I think we might go over Peter's design again because that was so good, but it's going to be very much Halloween themed and what makes hyper stylized Halloween designs so impactful and so iconic, right? And then, of course, some community spotlights where we will highlight some really cool things that we see going on in the Saros community and then answer any questions that you might have. The week after that, we'll have our next community creative challenge webinar, Masking Made Easy. This is the challenge that I wanted to do ever since we started doing these. And I restrained myself until the appropriate month. So we'll see you then, November 7th. And then November 14th, we've got a really cool one put on by Travis on the Saros Educate team, all about very much actually to do with what we've talked about, creating really cool interactions through object states within Saros. And then lastly on the calendar, not the last one we're doing this year, but for November, from static to magic, transforming your PDFs, very much to do with what we got, what we're doing or talked about today, sorry, is finding interactive moments in your static content. That is put on by Corey Wallace and Angie over on the marketing side of the house, and really excited for that. So feel free to check out all the webinars, get registered for them so we can see you again. But thank you so very much, everybody, for joining. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday, and we'll see you around. Ta-ta.